Hi everyone, welcome to PAPO EMBALADO, the videocast brought to you by Valgroup. I'm Carlos Santos, and today we are focusing on microplastics. We are joined by Dr. Chris DeArmitt, scientist and the author of the book The Plastics Paradox, and also Marlos Giuntini, Valgroup's Innovation Director. Let's get started. Thank you, Chris, to have you again with us in this episode. Thank you also, Marlos, to join us.
Thank you.
And the topic of this episode is very controversial, and it raises a lot of doubts, a lot of misinformation, and I'm talking about microplastics.
Right.
So I'd like to start with you, Chris. There is a lot of talk about microplastics these days. And could you explain what is microplastics and where they come from?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'd like to say is I've read 400 studies on microplastics. So I'm considered an expert on that because that's the only way to understand something is to read. Microplastics are just a part of dust. We breathe dust all day. So it's kind of a mystery why we're talking about plastic dust. There's no micrometals. When did you hear anyone talk about micrometals, microwood, microglass? Nobody talks about it. They just made up a word, microplastic, and it sounds scary because it sounds new and foreign, but it isn't. It's just a small component of dust, which is everywhere. So that's why it amazes me when I see an article, we found microplastics on Mount Everest. I'm like, really? You found dust on Mount Everest? That's a newspaper article? I mean, imagine I found some dust here and I call the New York Times and say, hey, I need to speak to the editor. I found some dust on my book. That is how crazy people are about microplastics.
The brakes of the cars, for instance.
The brakes of the cars, dust is everywhere. Our body is designed to breathe dust.
The tires.
Tires, everything is dust. And the funny part is microplastics are 0.001% of dust and non-toxic.
Compared to
all
any
dust.
Other materials.
Yeah, compared to 100% of dust, plastic is 0.001% and non-toxic. The rest of the dust contains things that cause cancer, things which are actually poisonous, things that nobody is talking about, right? So why would you talk about a tiny, tiny, tiny thing and ignore the things that are actual proven dangers in the world?
All right. And environmental groups often raise alarms about the dangers of microplastics.
Yeah.
But are these dangers being overstated? I assume, as you just said. But my question is, what does the science really say about it? We have studies. What we have to.
Right. So the way to know what's happening in the subject is you look at a review. So that's an article that looks at all the other articles and looks at the evidence and brings it together in a summary. So they actually looked at that and they found that of scientific articles, 24% of scientific articles said that they're concerned about microplastics. The scientists say 24% of the studies. 93% of the media articles say microplastics are definitely a danger. So we know for a scientific fact that the media have lied to us. 20% of scientific articles say it could be a problem and 93% of media articles. And that is why the public is concerned, because the media have lied to them. And the second point to make is how many of these studies are valid? So when you do look at studies that say microplastics are a problem, what do they really do in these studies? They use 1 million times too much particles, 1 million times more than is in the environment. And they say, hey, we found a problem. But that science is invalid. It's nonsense. It's complete rubbish science. Should be thrown in the trash can. Because if you take oxygen, you have 20% oxygen now in the air. If you increase that to 100%, you die. And that's 5 times increase, right? They're taking the amount of plastic in the atmosphere and multiplying 1 million times to find a problem. You can multiply anything in the atmosphere by 1 million times and you'll have a problem. So this is terrible science, but that is the kind of rubbish things that the public are seeing now.
Why do we have this kind of science?
Oh, because lies are much more exciting than the truth. So the way to get money, I'm a scientist, the way to get money is to get attention, scare people and get money. It's the same in the media. the scarier it is and the more nonsense. Somebody said, if you're going to tell a lie, tell the biggest one, because that's the one people will believe. And that's what's happening now. People are just lying and lying and lying and making money. The president of Greenpeace left Greenpeace and said they're just telling lies for money now. That's their business model, according to the former president of Greenpeace. So the people we're trusting to tell us about the environment, according to their own former president, are just making stuff up.
Wow. Marlos, let me give you one question in following. What innovations are emerging in Brazil to mitigate the environment impacts of microplastic?
That's a good question. Even though there's not a specific legislation in Brazil to address the microplastics issue, there's a lot of pressure from NGOs and civil society groups, for example, probably due to what you just said. So that puts some pressure in the industry as well to come up with different things. One of these things, and I'm just observing what the market is releasing, has to do with bioplastics. So there's a lot of R&D behind the creation of bioplastics. That's one example. Another innovation is related to advanced filtration systems, which is a good thing, right? So and how to make them accessible to industries and also to households. So this is something that is ongoing, which could help with the filtration of microplastics at the source. That would help with the number and the amount of microplastics that are released in the oceans. Other things that we can comment are related to Brazilian research with bacteria that could degrade these microplastics in oceans and also in coastal areas. That could help also reduce the concentration of those microplastics as well. So these are some of the things that have been in discussion in the Brazilian industry that could help address. We can then obviously discuss life cycle analysis and for the different options. Some of them might be positive, others might be negative. But this is some of the things that are calling the attention in the Brazilian industry at this point.
You mentioned ocean. And Chris, how do microplastics impact marine life and also human life? But
Right. So according to scientists, it's negligible. There's no effect. So they worked out how much microplastic would you need to have in the ocean to have any effect. And the actual amount is hundreds of times less than that. So there is zero effect in the ocean, according to scientists. That's their actual word, was negligible, no effect, not even close. And if you look at microplastics in the ocean, only 8% are synthetic, and the rest of them are natural, like fur and cellulose fibers. So again, we're talking about a very small percentage of the total, which has no effect, and completely ignoring over 90% of the plastic. We're just talking about the synthetic ones and ignoring the other ones, even though they have both no toxicity. So the World Wildlife Fund, for example, has said we eat a credit card of plastic every week. And do you know what the latest scientific article says? It would take 20,000 years to eat a credit card of plastic, of microplastic.
exaggeration.
A massive exaggeration, complete nonsense. I mean, this study literally says they're out of their minds. The World Wildlife Fund study is completely wrong. It's very rare for a scientific study to point at another study and say, these guys have lost their minds, this is just wrong. But that's what the study says. So this is what happens. You tell the public that it's dangerous when it isn't dangerous. You tell them they're being exposed to large amounts when they're not being exposed to large amounts. It's a tiny, tiny fraction and less dangerous than all the other particles.
And microplastics have also been found in food and water.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what does the scientific evidence say about the health risks of consuming these particles? But I'd like to go a little deep in that, because you mentioned in your book that these microplastics, they don't release the toxicity, something like that.
Right. So there are no health effects from microplastics. And go online and look up what am I going to die from? It's heart attacks. It's eating a bad diet, being overweight. There's diseases, all kinds of things. There are a lot of reasons why you can die. The recorded deaths from microplastics in the world is 0. Nobody has ever died from microplastics. And you know, there's like a 30% risk you'll die of a heart attack. I don't know the exact numbers on that. Yeah. But like, there is no evidence of harm whatsoever. So that's the big message. We're worrying about something. Do you have enough hours in the day to worry about all the things they want us to worry about? Do you have enough time and money to spend on things which are not? I mean, you could get run over by a car, right? That's a real worry. That could really happen, right? There are real problems in the world. And instead, we're worrying about things which aren't problems. There's not enough time to do it, right? We're worrying our children in schools over nothing. It's complete insanity.
And have you noticed the more noise about the microplastics, or in general, people are more have more conscience about it's almost irrelevant
People are still worried
in
about
terms
it.
of health and so on.
Well, the FDA just came out. They reviewed all the science. The Federal Drug Administration in America, they reviewed all the science and said there's no health effects, there's no cause for any harm according to the science. There are some studies that say that there's a problem, but like I said, they use 1,000,000 times too much plastic. They use a kind that is not even in the environment. The studies that show a problem literally pick a kind of plastic that only exists in the lab and no one in the world has ever been exposed to it. A special kind of, so it's, again, these are two reasons why the study is not valid. But the valid studies compare, for example, they use the right concentration, they use the right kind of plastic like PET, they find nothing. And the best studies compare the plastic to other particles. And when you compare plastic to clay or cellulose, which is what plants are made of, it's exactly the same. Same toxicity, no toxicity, safe. So that's the actual situation. But you can't make any money by telling people things are safe. The way you make money is to lie to them, scare them, and get them to empty their pockets.
And it works.
It works. Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
I can tell you, I'm telling the truth for free. I read 4,000 studies, unpaid, and that's not profitable. That's a waste of time. My wife thought I'd lost my mind. This is not my job. This is my hobby, just telling the truth. My job is being a scientist, right? And this is taking time away from my actual job, which earns money for my family, right? And I was starting to wonder if I lost my mind. Why am I out there spending my own time and my own money telling the truth when most people would rather be scared based on nonsense?
Spend long nights awake. Marlos, how is the Brazilian market reacting to the growing demand for plastic alternatives due to the microplastics debate?
Again, well, there's a lot of pressure coming from all of these discussions. So you see industries like textiles, not too much textiles, but cosmetics probably, that are phasing out microbeads in exfoliant products and changing that to natural, the so-called natural alternatives. But that always comes at a cost, right? So you can have innovations, you can have different products, but then what makes more sense from a cost standpoint? Because products need to be accessible. So all of these changes that happen for no reason, or just because of the pressure that was created by this type of science, is making industries move sometimes to more expensive alternatives without a good reason. So that's what's happening. So we see that those types of movements in the Brazilian industry as well. There are regional legislations that are coming up, mostly regarding single-use plastics, which indirectly address the issue of microplastics, right? But they're very isolated initiatives at this point. But these things are also happening. We talked about the NGOs already, so this creates a lot of noise. And then when we talk about alternative raw materials or resins, they also come at a cost. So biodegradable materials or compostable materials, they are always more expensive than the traditional resins that are available out there in the marketplace. So we see those reactions in the Brazilian industry as well. But again, it all comes down to the cost. I mean, products still need to be accessible. They need to keep their function, and protect the products, contain the products, being able to transport them from point A to B with safety, with stability, with all of the things that a package should deliver. So as a result, most of these measures and movements will increase the cost of these products at some point in time.
One thing to say about this drive towards bioplastics you mentioned, the customer believes that a plastic will start like this and it will get smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's bad, right, they think. But it's the same with sand, right? You start off with a rock and then you have a stone and then you have a gravel and then you have a sand and then you have dust. All solids are forming smaller particles. Glass does it, clay does it, concrete does it, metal does it. It rusts to smaller particles. So it's nothing special about plastics. All of these things are forming smaller particles. And the reason people are interested in degradable plastics is that people think that this will form a small particle and then somehow magically that stops degrading and it never vanishes. And that's wrong. The smaller a piece of plastic is, the quicker it degrades because the oxygen can get to the surface more easily. So the customer does not understand that regular plastics like PET, polyethylene, polypropylene, even polystyrene and PVC do degrade, and they do biodegrade. And the smaller they get, the quicker they degrade. And that's scientifically proven. So we don't need to move to a more expensive biopolymer because the ones we already have are already degrading. They don't stop.
Even by the oxygen,
yes.
oxiding.
By oxygen, by insects, by fungi, by bacteria, by sunlight, they're degraded by all of these mechanisms. And there are thousands of scientific peer-reviewed articles about that.
Chris, how should industry, you believe, should respond to address these worries and ensure product safety?
Yeah.
What is the role of the industry in this?
I've been disappointed in my own industry because basically the plastics guys are nice guys and girls, and we've been too nice. We thought, well, this isn't true, it will go away. But we just let these lies spread for many years without doing anything. We just thought, oh, well, it's nonsense, it will go away.
Why not?
But nobody fought anything. Everyone's just listening. They're afraid to take the fight. They're afraid. And it's not about defending plastics. It's about defending the truth. At the moment, they're telling your children and my children lies at school, and they're going to end up growing up buying products which increase harm, cost more money, and voting for policies which are nonsense. So that's the problem. It's not about defending plastics. Plastic sales are as good as they ever were. This whole campaign is not maybe that's why they didn't fight, because it has no effect on plastic sales. I don't know. But I've been disappointed because there are institutions, there are organizations paid millions of dollars to take this fight, and they haven't done it. They've just taken the money and wasted it on something else.
Even today, or
today, absolutely.
Even today,
yes, they're absolutely useless.
You don't see a movement towards to do
no
clarification of this.
I see a few people, CEOs in big companies who are starting to get upset and disappointed in the organizations which they already paid to take the fight. I see that, but I don't see any organization stepping forward and really making a difference.
And Marlos, do you see the same in Brazil industries, especially in the plastic sector? What is your view? Is the same point of Chris?
Yeah, it is very, very similar. And well, if we want to see the glass half full, all of those discussions and this debate, for some companies, is helping them, is putting some pressure for them to anticipate improvements in things like waste management, and this, I think, is the positive side of it, because if you take companies that export to Europe, for example, they need to comply with these regulations. Then there are some regulations around microplastics as well there. So to be able to export, some of the Brazilian companies are anticipating these type of improvements. So how to control plastic waste. So how to control water treatment and things like that. So that is to me, is the glass half full. But the situation is basically very similar to what Chris just said.
It's worth saying that people are looking for technologies to reduce microplastic, but they already have done these studies. All the science is done. We know it's safe, and we know that a normal water treatment plant removes 97% of all particles. They have filters already, so that we're not waiting for some new magical technology to stop it. It's already done in water treatment plants, the exact same plants we have today. And I see these ridiculous articles. Some child at school developed a ferrofluid that's going to reduce. Complete nonsense.
Yeah, and
filters work just fine.
Yes, about these rumors where we used to listen about the microplastics found in human blood and also in placenta.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that sounds.
And there it's a truth. It's really we really have this in our blood.
Yes, dust is everywhere.
All right.
It would be a miracle not to find dust inside the human body. We're designed for that. We've spent tens of thousands of years breathing dust and having systems in our biology to get rid of dust. We're used to that. So there is plastic, but this is what surprises me and annoys me as bad science, because you read these studies about. So we've known about particles in the body for 20 years. It's not news. all kinds of particles, titanium dioxide particles, carbon black particles, soot particles from burning, and nobody's talking about it. It's known. There's scientific studies for 20 years talking all about particles in the body, not news. And when you do get a study, they only talk about the plastic particles. And here's how bad it is. They did a study on human blood, and they only talk about plastic. And I finally found one study where they measured all the particles in the blood. You know what they found? One safe polyethylene particle and 99 other particles made of all kinds of pigments and crazy chemicals that no one's talking about. And this is how bad the science is. Why would you throw away 99 particles and only scare the public about the one safe particle, not mention the other ones? That's terrible science. And all of these studies I'm talking about, go to my website. You can click and read it yourself. So it's not like some magical thing. You can literally download it and read it yourself. It's available for everybody for free. You don't have to enter your email address or anything. It's just click it and read it.
Wow, that's amazing, huh?
Why would we scare somebody about 1% of something and not mention the rest? That's just...
Focus so much on that.
Yeah, it's illogical.
Yes. So we are coming to the end of our episode. Do you have any other consideration to put it about this topic?
No, I still think that we need to keep on investing in R&D and innovation. I think that will help us also get the best of all of the raw materials and plastic resins and options that are available. And then we with that knowledge and with a lot of data, we will be able to select the best options in terms of cost and performance. So I think that is our challenge. And also the cost and performance balance will take us to the optimal point to make products accessible to people. I think that is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. Be it food packaging or industrial packaging, when you have the cost optimized and you have a safe product, then you have the optimal scenario for products to be available everywhere.
I should mention that people think this is one of the places where people talk about microplastics, right, in the bottle of water. They find microplastics and dust in every kind of water: ocean water, river water, bottled water with glass. Reusable bottled water with glass has a lot of microplastics. And people wonder, where is this plastic coming from? Because when you fill the bottle, there's no plastic. You know where it comes from? Putting on the cap. Every time you do that and do that, it's 500 new particles. 500, 500, 500. And this is where it's come from. Scientists have proven it. It's not a mystery. And this is good news, because it means we know that these plastics are safe, food-grade PET, which is 100% safe, and food-grade, FDA-approved polyethylene from the cap. It's not some mystery plastic. We know exactly what it is. It's the safe plastic that the bottle's made of. And it's another important thing. This is the good kind of design, this cap, because once you understand the problem, you can fix it. Most of the microplastics come from a design of this thread. This is smooth. You see how this is thread? It's a helix. Yeah. Often you have a break in that thread. When you put a break in the thread, you get sharp points, and then you get 10 times more microplastics. When you have a smooth one, you get 90% less microplastics. So again, this is a thing where scientists have already measured this. They know the problem.
Design.
And you can fix it easily with design in no time.
All right. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow Valgroup on social media to stay updated on the next episodes. See you then!